Welcome back to Up Front. Wisconsin voting laws are on trial in Madison. 2 liberal groups and 10 voters have sued in federal court, saying the recent changes state Republicans made to the voting process are discriminatory. But the state says that increased voter turnout this year, April primary, disproves that. The trial continues tomorrow, and we're talking about it now with our political panel, John Nichols of the Capital Times and The Nation, and Christian Schneider of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Gentlemen, good to have you back on the program. Let's talk about this case. John Nichols, is this really a big deal?
It looks like it's developing into quite a big deal. And the people who are managing it, I mean, the people who are litigants in it, have done a very good job of sort of building it each day. Opening up with a former Republican legislative aide who says, I was in the meetings, they were giddy about how this might help them politically. They were all excited. These are Republican state senators. They were excited about its impact on Milwaukee, about its impact on college campuses, things like that. Just detailing that at the start got a huge amount of in-state and national attention. And I think then they've developed it out with academics coming in and other people pointing out the impact of these voter ID laws. I think it's been a bigger deal than I anticipated. And there's one other element, too. It's important to recognize. It's not just about the voter ID. It's also about a host of initiatives by the Republicans that look at every turn to err against the Wisconsin tradition of high turnout, of welcoming people to the process. So I do think it's highlighting a real problem, and it has potential legal legs.
Is it a big deal, Christian? Do Republicans look bad at all based on what we've heard so far in this case?
No, I mean, voter ID still has strong support in the state. Voter ID is here to stay. We just had an election where, turnout was up 50% over the prior election. The staffer, this is a completely uncorroborated story, and who knows what effect that's really going to have on the court at this point. But the question is, I mean, this is, I think, the 5th lawsuit that's been filed against voter ID. They've all been smacked down at some point. The U.S. Supreme Court, 7th Court of Appeals in Chicago have all said voter ID is fine, with some caveats. Now, this lawsuit could deal with the caveats, which are expanding the number of IDs that are available, really helping those people that, don't want to go get an ID, but literally can't, like they have trouble with birth certificates and things like that. So, and Governor Walker, just announced an edict last week that says, if you're looking to try to get a photo ID, voter ID, you can go get a receipt and then, present that and vote. So. They're taking steps in that direction, and I just don't see this lawsuit going anywhere.
So at the end, go ahead.
I'll rest my case on everything that Christian just said. It was all like, yeah, this is doesn't mean anything. It's fine. Governor Walker just happened to move right when this case is in play to ease off on a law that is being targeted in the courts. And, look, the absurdity of it is, of course, the Republicans are very concerned about the image. That's why I would argue these things are happening at this point. And beyond that, I would emphasize we are talking about a host of issues here. And where voter ID goes, the 7th Circuit has indicated concerns and interests that I think have potential there. But beyond that, these things like attacking early voting, making it, really going in on early voting, I think there's quite a few things that could potentially go up.
Let me give you a chance to respond to that. Go ahead.
Republicans aren't worried about looking bad to the 70 to 80% of people who support voter ID, so it's going to be around.
You think that the public just supports it and does not see the same issues with this?
Yeah. If this was a vote suppression method, then it's the worst ever because we just had 700,000 more people vote in the last election.
I think that's one of the most troubling arguments you can make. Is, we just had a relatively high turnout election, so let's not worry about high turnout from here on out. No, I'm worried about making sure that it's easy for people to vote and that we have maximized fair, high turnout elections in Wisconsin all the time.
Anything you want to add to that?
No, so do I.
Okay, so do you.
All right, so he's with me now.
So let's talk about the other big deal in court this past week. And so we see the state Supreme Court issue a ruling, 4-3 ruling, that says we're going to strike down this new law that would give the governor and the Secretary of Administration more power over the Department of Public Instruction. Tony Evers, the superintendent, says is a victory for public education. I'll begin with you on this, Christian. Should we be surprised by that ruling? 4-3. That means you have a couple of the more liberal justices siding with a couple of the more conservative justices to strike down this law.
Yeah, so I think you have a lot of people who are surprised that, you know, the Supreme Court would go against Scott Walker. But, you know, Scott Walker's a conservative. You know, 5 of the justices on the Supreme Court are also conservative. So on issues of conservatism, you're going to line up pretty well. But this really wasn't even a conservative versus liberal situation where, you know, the state constitution gives DPI, the Secretary of Education, the ability to, you know, manage education. So on that spectrum, it doesn't surprise me at all that you might find a split court on something like that.
Are you surprised by that?
I was thrilled by it. I think it's a really good thing. Our state has always believed in an independent, nonpartisan, statewide elected official having oversight on education. That's important. That's been under assault for a very long time. I think the court did the right thing. I think it's important to note that one of the justices who did the right thing is retiring.
David Prosser.
The governor is going to pick a new justice for the state, is going to make an appointment. And I think it's very, very important for us to inquire about that appointee and to make sure that that appointee will, at least on issues of basic respect for the Constitution, show the same regard that was shown in this decision. I think that's a very, very important issue because the governor is really shaping this court. And I'd like to make sure that this court doesn't just exist as an extension of the governor, but as an independent body.
10 seconds. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think it was a good decision, and I think it, you know, helps the kind of what people think about the court. You know, it's been so fractured for so long.
Christian Schneider from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, John Nichols from the Cap Times and The Nation. It's always good to have you guys here.
Yeah,
thanks very
thanks.
much. Coming up next, the Waukesha water request, why some are saying the city should not be allowed to tap Lake Michigan water.